Well, hello, Teresa. We're heading to the last weekend in May, and of course, just a couple of weeks before summertime period. Prices at the pumps right across the country seem to have come down a little bit. They've tapered off. I know we've discussed this in the past, but there's been a lot of anxiety over the fact that after we got the bit of a head fake with a temporary drop in carbon taxes, as the consumer side, that things should really fall. In fact, they went down not just 20 cents because the carbon tax was removed, as if not to make the points we've made for several years. It was too costly for Canadians. We also saw at the time, at the beginning of April, OPEC had decided it was going to resort to bringing back more production online. So that dropped oil about $10 a barrel. The two effects was to drop gasoline net 30 cents a liter, which of course is why we saw inflation drop month over month, rather April of 2024 compared to April 2025. So what that really means is that although prices are likely to remain stable, as they often do after the May 2-4 weekend and the U.S. Memorial Day long weekend, the official kickoff to summer driving, where there is an increase in demand, it looks like prices are going to remain stable for the next couple of weeks, not until we get to a lot closer to the end of June when kids are off for summer holidays. And then people start taking summer trips. Do we actually see the demand go even higher? We've also noticed that in the United States, refiners seem to be getting back on track. So we've seen examples, and let's go from coast to coast of Vancouver, where prices hit $1.86. They're now down to $1.64 by Sunday. So there's another 2-cent drop. That's been 18 cents over the week because refiners are really getting back into the swing of things. We're also looking at a scenario where supply is becoming more adequate right across the United States. Lower prices has meant refiners have had a tough go of it trying to keep up. In the U.S. Midwest, which influences prices for all of the BC interior, so that would be places like Kamloops, Kelowna, Prince George, and so on. As well as all of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, even a slice of northwestern Ontario. The Chicago spot market has also tapered off somewhat, moving down from about $2.25 a gallon down to about $2.14 a gallon. That's responsible for about a 3-cent or 4-cent a liter decrease, which we should start to see in major cities like Regina, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Edmonton throughout this weekend. So a little bit of good news on the way for Ontario, of course, which, like Quebec and Atlantic Canada, Maritimes, follows the New York spot market for gasoline. We've seen just in the past week, when you and I last talked about this, prices on the U.S. market going from about $2.19, $2.20 a gallon down to $2.08 a gallon. And we've seen the Canadian dollar rise in value versus the U.S. greenback with some very, I think, false information that we're seeing this morning about giddiness over GDP. I'll get to that in just a moment. But that means that gas prices are down on average about 3-4 cents a liter into the weekend. So, whereas we saw average prices in Ontario in the 136 range, it's now down to the 132 range this weekend. And for the next week, Quebec from $1.63 down to about $1.60, $1.59, because of course they still have a carbon tax and much higher taxes. Excuse me. Atlantic Canada, about to see the same thing because they've seen a 4-cent decrease in gasoline. And I should point out, right across the country, diesel prices have come down, as they normally do at this time of year when, we're not using diesel or heating oil as a proxy, furnace oil as a proxy for the season. So that means that it's really good news on the demand front. And on the supply front, and the prices continuing to taper off. But this is probably as low as it's going to get, unless something dramatic should happen. Now, what is dramatic is this morning's giddiness. I woke up to several radio stations and MSN saying, oh, what a great thing. We had big growth. It could be 2.2% this year based on the last quarter being 0.5%. Baloney. It's actually because in the first quarter of this year, Q1 2025, suppliers, retailers, manufacturers were buying like crazy in order to hoard to get ahead of the Trump tariffs. And that's the only reason we saw growth. Otherwise, we're seeing rather pathetic growth when it comes to, housing. Activity is down. So, except for a couple of condominiums that are finishing in Toronto, which are flooding the market there, we're not seeing much in the way of anything that would indicate we're going to get another quarter of positive growth. So this giddiness, this willingness not to read, the real reasons behind this sudden uptick, if you will, suggests that Canada is continuing down the path of low growth and a decline in its economic activity. And it's not going to get any better just because we wish it to be that way. It was unfortunate that most media have bought the sauce, as it were, and decided that they're going to spread, false good news, because it's not good news. Anyone, including youth trying to find jobs this summer, knows that there's something wrong. And so for that reason, it's another example of where paid media by the federal government is always out to do, either very lazy, sloppy work, not willing to look at the facts, or in fact presenting, what amounts to making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. At the end of June, beginning of July, look for prices to skyrocket, and that's, of course, what we'll take off this time next week, Teresa, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks again.